Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HR Roundtable. Just for our first part of our session today, we have asked JC Spratt to come and talk with us related to some HR manager training that she's been doing and wanted to give her an opportunity to talk with all of you and also to answer any questions that you might have. JC, let me turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, PJ. Good afternoon, everyone. Really nice to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and present. So I want to introduce myself. I have more about my bio on the next page. But in summary, my name is JC Spratt. I'm a facilitator, a leadership trainer, as well as an ICF certified career and leadership coach. And I'm also a member of the HR Roundtable as of 2025. I've had the great pleasure of being connected to PJ and attending meetings when I can. I'm going to walk you through what I did recently. And I'm so happy, David, that you joined. It was with David's organization, the Aga Khan Foundation. But before we even go into it, I just wanted to get a sense from you all as HR managers and practitioners. What are the major issues and challenges that you're seeing with your staff when it comes to their supervisory skills? And so I'm, fine with if you want to call it out, that's great. If you prefer to use the chat, that's great as well. But I would just love to take a little ad hoc poll of where some of these challenges are. I'm going to go ahead and call them out too. I'm trying to get the chat up here. Here we go. And I gave you a couple of examples. Number one, I've been seeing is really challenged giving constructive feedback. Also, a lot of challenges around performance management, lack of coaching skills. The list can go on. Okay, so not enough time to manage, lack of confidence when addressing issues, yeah, inability to coach effectively. Awesome. These are great. Who's seeing issues with feedback? Okay, another coaching. Anybody a verbal processor? Want to call them out? As you'll see, I love engagement, so I'm always happy to get a couple of verbal contributors as well. Okay, leading effectively.
Well, I'm happy to jump in and say feedback is
Yeah.
definitely always a challenge.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. We try to get them to do quarterly meetings to give feedback, just so they're giving feedback throughout the year. And honestly, it's the new hires, the newer managers coming in that we can get to do it. You can't get any of the staff that haven't been doing it that way to do it.
Yeah. So difficulty giving feedback and difficulty changing habits when they've been managing for a while. Okay. Yeah, fantastic. These are great. And if you have others that come to mind, please feel free to share them. All right. If you want to go to the next slide, PJ. So I'm going to walk you through what I recently did. And David, if you want to pop on and say hello, I'm going to introduce you since you gave me this wonderful opportunity. Do we
Yeah,
have you
hi.
here?
Yep, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So glad you could join. So I recently was contracted by David Jenkins and the Aga Khan Foundation to create and deliver a manager training course. This was back in April. And it was for 14 employees, ranging from new managers to the CEO. It was an awesome opportunity, and I'll talk a little bit about what having that diverse audience was like. Definitely presented a challenge, but also an incredible opportunity. So the way I worked with David was to design. He was very clear that they wanted in person, which I think was fantastic. Although I'll talk a little bit later about potential customizations. But I designed a 2-day in-person training. We worked together. We ended up making it from 10 to 4 each day. And each day we wanted to make sure there was really, time, given it was a big piece of their days. We wanted to make sure that they had enough time to decompress, to get work done if they needed to. So we allotted 1 hour to lunch. And we also made sure that they had breaks for 15 minutes, both in the morning and the afternoon. The format that we really sought to develop, especially because we had this incredible opportunity to all be in person, was to make it as interactive and collaborative as possible. So to that end, I focused on using a lot of small group activities, a lot of case studies, even some role play. Although I'm really careful with the word role play because I know sometimes it's not people's favorites. But I wanted to make sure that the content was, applicable and relevant to the Aga Khan Foundation employees' context. Worked really hard to develop something that was going to be enjoyable for them. And I was also very much aware that, having new managers all the way up to the CEO definitely, gave a lot of different levels of experience, as well as we had a number of supervisees in the room with their supervisor. So I worked closely with David just to make sure that that dynamic was, going to be comfortable, that we would have good ground rules to make sure that people felt safe, that in certain activities, we divided them up in ways that were strategic and just, maximized, people's comfort as well as their ability to, to share. And I use practical models and tools throughout, and I'm going to get at that in just a minute. Just kind of some of the different tools that we used and that, I wanted them to walk away with. And I've got my bio. I'm not going to go through it, but you have a little bit about me. I love what I do and just really love the opportunity to do this. If you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to walk you through the curriculum. So our agenda for day one, we started out with the role of the supervisor. Really, at the high level, wanted to look, at attributes of a good supervisor versus, supervisors that haven't been as effective, making sure those came through clear from the beginning. What it looks like, and this was for the newer managers in the room, what it looks like to shift from doer to leader. And then some of the pitfalls that new supervisors go through. And again, they're not just for new supervisors, but we see them a lot with new supervisors. What ethical leadership and accountability looks like, and how the supervisors connected, at all levels to the organization. So we started there. We then went into fundamentals of team development. We looked at, again, highest level, what makes, of team high performing. We did some work around Tuckman's model. We looked at the leader's role in team development, and then at Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Had some activities peppered throughout. And then we ended the day really focused on communication, and I wanted to do sort of a broad swath of that. So looking at the elements of effective communication, both verbal and nonverbal, some of the stuff I've done around presentation skills, as well as executive presence, active listening. And then just because so many of us work virtually now that, we really wanted to drill down onto, kind of choosing the right means of communication at the right time. So does it merit an email? Does it merit an instant message, or does it merit a meeting? So we spent some time there, and the team had a lot of fun with that. And then really kind of focusing and honing in on, providing feedback. Challenges, best practices. And I also used, for those of you familiar with it, the situation behavior impact model, SBI. And we did some work practicing around that. And it was really interesting because the group, it's and David can talk more about the organization itself, but they are international and coming from different backgrounds. And it was just really interesting for them, to just talk about their own sort of norms and just preferences around feedback, and sometimes how those square with some of the best practices working in North America. So I wanted to be sensitive to those issues as well. So that was our day one. It was chock full, but we finished on time, and then we came back for day two. Really getting into the meat around managing performance as well as coaching and delegating. For module 4, focusing on managing performance, I really wanted to focus on the fact that, managing performance is not just about the annual review, or as PJ talked about, those quarterly reviews. We wanted to drill in that it's a daily occurrence, and you really want to bake that into new supervisors. So we looked at a performance management cycle that, started with setting expectations, all the way through observing and monitoring, to giving feedback to reinforce the lessons and feedback that we did on day one, to course correcting when things go awry, and then of course to recognizing and reinforcing. And I brought in scenarios. I worked with David to make scenarios that were, right up in, Aga Khan's core work. And then we, grouped the participants so that they would get to focus in on what was most relevant to their jobs. And then we spent some time on delegating and coaching. kind of course, looking at the differences between, what delegation is as well as what coaching is, what it looks like to delegate successfully, looking at the situational leadership model, really focusing on that, as a leader, you don't want to manage everyone in the same way. You want to be able to understand, kind of not only what their knowledge and skills are, as well as their motivation, and be able to tailor how you manage to, those abilities. And then we talked about what it means to embrace a coaching mindset. We practice asking powerful questions. As a coach, I'm so big on how do you ask questions? How do you listen actively? So we did some work around that. And then, David and I added in this module, this one, I really thought, gosh, we're living in really, how do I say it? Just challenging times with constant, noise, right, coming, from the news, as well as just constant changes to, beginning with, I felt like since COVID in 2020, now AI. And PJ, I'm so happy you're doing something on AI for all of us, because obviously it's a game changer. So we wanted to look at what it means to be a leader in challenging and uncertain times. And, we wanted to do everything from, kind of what the supervisor's role is, how do you use, in the absence of knowing everything, how do you support your supervisees? How do you use supportive language and behaviors? And then I really wanted to leave them with some tangible tools. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the circle of control versus the circle of influence and the circle of concern. It's a great tool. People use it from the elementary level, all the way to, adulthood. We gave them that. And then I wanted to give them some great tools around prioritization and time management. So we looked at Eisenhower's matrix and Covey's big rocks, and we got the chance to test those, to apply them to their context. And then I ended the day with some case studies. And so it was a real, fantastic, chock full 2 days together. And I was really happy with, kind of how it went. So that's a little bit about the agenda. And as I've been thinking about how to do this more, I have thought about customization options. My preference is always to be in person. Just I think the dialogue and the discussion is richer. The laughs are better. It's always great. But that said, I know that being in person isn't always an option. So I can deliver it virtually if needed. I can certainly shorten it to one day. It would definitely be less group work, but it is doable, particularly with a smaller group. In my former life in the global development sector, I did a lot around new manager training. I love new managers because I feel that they're so open to learning. People often skip over, they're promoted because they know how to do, not because they know how to lead, but getting them those foundations for management and leadership at that, time in their career is such a game changer. And I'd love to see more companies invest in new managers. So I could certainly tailor it to the new manager cohort with their specific challenges and concepts for that time in their career. And then, of course, I could also do it for a more senior level, manager cohort, particularly what it looks like to lead in really challenging and uncertain times. And of course, I could deliver it in a smaller, to a smaller audience in a more informal coaching style. So I just thought a little bit about, okay, what does customization of this look like? Although I did love the format that we ended on. David, I think it was, it was a good way to do it, and he can comment on it as well. But lastly, to that end, I did include some participant feedback. I included some pricing, although, pricing is one of those tricky things because this is just sort of a ballpark. I am always willing to work with an organization kind of in, what their own budget and situation looks like. So it was a ballpark I wanted to put down, as well as how much customization would be involved. So that is what I did with Aga Khan. David, I just want to give you the chance to comment. Did I capture it correctly and fully?
Yeah, and I have to say, it was a very a great experience for our team. We had a few goals in mind. We were taking the opportunity to bring everybody together. We have several folks that were out of town that we were bringing them to DC for for the training and for some team building. We were looking for something that understanding that the idea was to have everybody from a new manager to the CEO, getting the same message and getting the same information at the same time, but understanding what the dynamics were involved, and having some folks in there with their managers, working with JC to really kind of fine tune around those. It was great. She was excellent at really creating something that we could use for the whole team. It came across as an excellent use of time for our folks. Again, everybody was very charged, very excited coming out of both days. I was surprising to me just knowing my folks how much JC was able to engage with them, that they actually you know paid attention.
They were awesome. I thought
They,
they were fantastic.
the distractions, we took breaks and people didn't run back to their desk. They stayed there and continued to have conversations around a lot of the material that was being covered. It was an excellent use of 2 days of our time for all of our manager. They got such great things from it, and highly recommend the program as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it, David. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I know we're coming up at time. I just want to, see if there's any questions, anything that wasn't clear. Okay. Thank you
Casey,
so
thank you
much.
so much. I do appreciate it. We had a request in the HR Roundtable listserv, so I'm really glad that you were able to join us and just kind of give us an overview of what you did. This is probably one of the most asked about topics that comes up and has since I've been doing the roundtable. So we certainly do appreciate it. And I know everyone's got your contact information. I'll also include the recording with the summary if anyone has any additional questions. Thank you again. I appreciate it.